Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat. And my name's Phil Holsworth, your host. And my wonderful guest today is Carl Girk of the Mortgage Advisory Network. He's a director there. Carl, lovely to have you with us today. Thank you for your time.
No, nice to be here, Phil. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Carl, just before we get cracking, I know that you're reporting from your mobile office at this moment in time.
Indeed, yeah, the busy person at the moment. The market has sent us into somewhat of a bit of a flux over the past couple of weeks. So I am running around like a headless chicken.
Right. Well, thank you very much for just making some time for us. I know this is a really important subject, the mortgage market, but before we get into that, Carl, just tell us a little bit about you, your organisation, and the work that you do.
Okay, so a little bit about me. So Mortgage Advisory Network was born out of a dissatisfaction with where I was working previously, along with my fellow two directors. We both decided that we had our we're being tied behind our backs, for want of a better phrase, and there was more that we could be doing for our clients that we were being prevented from doing. So we jumped ship, started Mortgage Advisory Network, just to be able to give a full holistic service to our clients. So no matter whether a loan is secured against land or property, whether it be residential or commercial, we're able to assist in making sure that we give appropriate advice and make recommendations according to an individual's needs, circumstances, and requirements.
Yeah. That's fantastic, Carl. I know that's really pertinent because I think when there is unrest or rapid change or whatever's going on in any particular market, the natural propensity for people is to talk about it among themselves or in chat groups and things like this. And well-meaning people then sort of pop up giving all manner of advice, and it's not necessarily the right advice for them. Is that something that you come across? And what would you say to those people?
Oh, well, it's certainly something we come across. The sagest person in the world, well, the two sagest people in the world, should I say, are either somebody's parents or the man in the pub who apparently knows everything about everything. And unfortunately, what might be right for one is not right for another. Everybody's circumstances are different, and financial advice really ought to be tailored to an individual's circumstances, needs, and requirements, because it's not just about today.
Yeah.
Financial advice should be built around not just your situation today, but also taking account of your plans over the medium term.
Yeah.
There's no point locking yourself into a long-term fixed rate mortgage with horrendous exit penalties if you're moving and leaving the country in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's an extreme example, but it's one that you hear about far too many times. Just because something was good for the man at the end of the bar doesn't mean it's right for you. And it's very important to seek advice that's tailored to you. And that's all about speaking to a professional and having an individual conversation.
Yes.
So before I would even consider making any kind of recommendation, we're going to have a conversation. I want to find out so much about you. You might think he's irrelevant. I'm going to ask you lots of questions. And a lot of the time, I'm going to cause you to go away and think, because you might not have thought about those questions yourself. But I need an answer to those before I can formulate any kind of recommendation that's going to pass muster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so that it's not just right today, but it remains right for the changes in in your lifestyle. Families, children, these are things that are organic within somebody's financial lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was talking to a client last week, and we're just looking at a remortgage for them. Their young child is 2 years old, they want to move before the child goes to school.
Yes.
And the kind of property that they're looking to buy when they move, by virtue of the location, is going to be more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're starting to plan for the next 2 years now.
Right. Right.
So nothing is about today. It's also about the medium term. And when I'm saying the medium term, I'm talking about the next 5 years or so,
Yeah.
realistically, because asking you to think beyond 5 years is a little bit too far.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a valid point, isn't it? Because there's that saying, isn't there? You know, the only thing that remains the same or is constant is change, and we're in a state of rapid change, aren't we? I mean, you know, there's what a difference a year makes when you think of the interest rates, say. You know, a year ago being, what was it? Something like, I'm just looking here, about 0.1%. And, you know, your interest rates now are running at about 2.25%. And then all of a sudden we have a mini budget, and it really puts the cat among the pigeons, doesn't it? The mini budget. And suddenly, without people realizing, the mortgage market has gone absolutely scatty.
It has money markets, which is obviously where the majority of lenders source the funds to lend. They like certainty. They love stability, and unfunded public borrowing, as was announced in the mini budget, was of course it was going to send them into a bit of a tailspin. Unfunded tax cuts. Where was the money going to come from? If it was going to come from public borrowing and government borrowing, that's got to be paid at a cost, and we can't just keep kicking the can down the road asking our children and our grandchildren to pay for our standards of living today. We've got to start paying for some of the choices that we make today ourselves. And the market's priced their response to the budget, and they let everybody know. That's why all the lenders reprice the products. The swap markets, without getting too technical, the swap rates are what lenders use to price fixed rate mortgages.
Right.
The increase we've seen in the swap market pricing has been astronomical from a year ago until today. A year ago, a 5-year swap was under 1%. A 5-year swap today is over 5%. So we've seen a drastic increase in the cost of funding, which is why we're seeing mortgages priced where they are. And that's without what's happening in Ukraine, which is causing turmoil around the world's financial markets. And of course, the rest of the world is also playing catch up with what the US federal bank is doing. They've raised their interest rates further and faster than anybody expected. And the rest of the world is now playing catch up to try and shore up their own currencies against the dollar. So next week, we're expecting another base rate rise from the Bank of England. That again will push variable and tracker rate mortgages and make those a little bit more expensive. So always round, the market is incredibly dynamic right now. And it's all about a reacclimatization. We are heading back to where we were to rates pre-credit crunch. We've had 10 years, 14 years of very, very low interest rates. And the end of that period of time has hit us a lot quicker and with more immediacy than I think anybody planned it to. Everybody was hoping that we would have a gradual return to normal. And unfortunately, we've had a very sudden and immediate return.
It just reminds me, this period that we're in, it reminds me of some of my own experiences of the past. So I can remember sort of mid to late 80s, there was we got up to about 15% interest rates. And I remember that because for us, as a young couple, just sort of married, starting life as a couple, that was really crippling back then. And then we had The next, I suppose, big one was 2008 with market crashes and so on, and lots of changes have taken place. And it reminds me in a way of those times. But back then, the first one I mentioned, 15%, I mean, we're not at that stage, but we know what it's like at the moment, how crippling, because you're not just talking about the one thing. Here we're talking about mortgages and the mortgage market. But you talk about a combination of things, aren't you? And you mentioned Ukraine as one of those.
Well, yeah, we've got a perfect storm, haven't we? Mortgage pricing, your mortgage is becoming more expensive, your utilities are becoming more expensive, your food is becoming more expensive. So all these things, when you put them together, are causing a significant strain on the average family's household budget.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest conversations that I have with a client is their household budget. I spend more time with a client looking at your bank statements and asking you what you spend on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And most people don't really have a clue.
Yeah.
Because they've not had to think about it in too great a detail. And good mortgage advice is to recommend a total mortgage term that ensures you pay the mortgage back as quickly as is comfortably practical.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'll pay less overall. Now, if I can establish that you can afford X on your mortgage after covering all of your other outgoings, and that happens to be 24 years, 27 years, 18 years, whatever that period might be, that's the right recommendation for you. But I can only recommend that term if we've got a good handle on how much we're spending on everything else.
Yeah.
And
yes.
In a period that we find ourselves in today, the best advice I can give anybody is to sit down and do a proper household monthly budget and put some time into it. They're not the easiest things to do because we all have regular expenditure, which we know what that tends to look like. But we also have irregular expenses. So what do I mean by irregular expenses? Well, frankly, we look at things like Christmas, birthdays, festive occasion spending. We're not too far away from Christmas at the moment, and the average person would tend to buy the same people a Christmas present and a birthday present. And you do tend to roughly spend about the same amount of money on each. So if you know what you spend on Christmas, double it, divide it by 12, that's how much you're going to have to put by next year to cover your annual cost of festive occasions. Your annual holiday, you know how much you spend, divide it by 12. Your car insurance, nobody has a clue how much it costs them to keep a car. If I ask somebody, how much does your car cost to run? Well, I spend £70 a month on petrol. Well, it used to be that they're now spending 120, 130 on petrol. But everybody forgets it costs me. I mean, I generally take the train to work. It's not that often that I'm out in the car. Since the advent of everybody taking on Zoom chats and Teams meetings, I very rarely do home visits anymore because everybody's adopted technology, which is fantastic for me. But it means I get the train to work and go for a pint after work, and the car sits outside the house. But to keep the car sat outside the house costs me about £150 a month. You've got car tax, you've got insurance, you've got annual servicing, maintenance costs. Everybody forgets about those irregular expenses. So you've got to sit down and really think about those things that may only come around once a year or even once every 2 years. Throw a set of tires on a car. How many times a year do you do that? Well, you might want to do that once every 3 or 4 years, depending on your mileage. But how much is a set of tires? £400, £500, £600? But you've got to budget for them. What does it cost to fix the washing machine, replace the cooker, decorate the house, fix the roof? There needs to be an amount allotted in your monthly budget for home maintenance.
So, you know, Carl, as you're going through all those things, I've just got this sort of image in my mind of some of our listeners, you know, that less than 50% of the working population has any kind of financial plan. So what you're just hitting on right now is so pertinent. And I can see them now, they're like breaking out in hot sweats, because why would you go somewhere that you don't feel confident about, or it causes you anxiety every time you look at it? But your advice is so right and spot on that unless you know, it's like a journey, isn't it? You perhaps have an idea where you want to be, but how do you know how to get there if you don't know where you're starting from?
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. And the journey, your question there is reminds me of one of the most common questions I get asked.
Yeah.
What's the best mortgage at the moment? Oh, absolutely. I have no idea, because I don't know enough about you to answer that question. That's pretty much asking me to tell you that you want to go to the South Coast. Well, I can tell you how to get to the South Coast, but if you tell me exactly where on the South Coast you want to be, I can tell you the best way to get there.
Yes.
So we've got to know enough about you to give you the right advice and guide you in the right direction.
Yeah. It's so pertinent as well, because the numbers of people that I talk to who, and you alluded to the whole thing to do with the car. It's interesting, isn't it, with the car? People don't think of wear and tear. Okay, the car's parked outside, but when you are using it, there's wear and tear. And you mentioned the tires. What about the windscreen wipers? The coolant and oils and things like this, and people go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And yet, we're there's times when we're faced with having to replace these or purchase these. It's a cost, and if you've actually got a plan in place, suddenly your plan's out of sync, so you've got to rejig it. Or if you haven't got a plan in place, you just hope there's going to be enough money there. And I say to people as well, if you're thinking about your finances and planning, and they say, oh, I know exactly what's coming in, and I know what I'm doing. And if there's any money at the end of the month, I'll put it into savings. And I'll say to them things like, when was the last time you put anything into savings? Oh, I can't remember. And I said, the reason being is because if you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. The money isn't going to be there to put into savings. So, and then when they sit with somebody like yourself, they can't give you a true picture of themselves and where they're at, so that you can give them the best advice that you would give them.
No, exactly. You're right. If you fail to plan, you're never, ever going to achieve anything.
Yeah.
You should be planning to save X amount per month if you're looking to save.
Yeah, definitely.
That should be part of the plan. It shouldn't be, if there's any left, I will do it.
Yeah.
Savings should be part of your household budget.
Yeah. Yes. And anybody sort of listening to this podcast, one of the things that I know about the finance market is there are many things that are very complex, but don't let those put you off, because actually putting together a monthly budget or a monthly spending plan is key to reducing your stress and anxiety, and then allows you to be able to sit with professionals like Carl and get the right kind of advice that's just for you. If you need some help, then, ask, reach out. There's people like myself, even if you're seeking advice about mortgages, there's people like Carl who you can talk to and actually gain assistance to be able to get a good sort of feel for where you're at and what you're able to afford at any point in time. Would you say that's sort of the kind of thing that you would say, Carl, to people? Is there anything else that you would sort of add in there that you feel is quite pertinent?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's absolutely key. You've got to think early.
Yeah.
You've got to plan and seek advice. Yeah. Absolutely seek advice. There's plenty of information on the internet. Your money supermarkets of this world. You've got all the comparison sites, and anybody can go online and compare a mortgage.
Yeah.
All you're doing is looking at rates and fees. Yeah. But that's not all there is about it. How is that right for you? Is immaterial. It doesn't matter what the interest rate is. It doesn't matter what the fees are if that's the wrong mortgage for you.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
taking advice is absolutely key to
Yeah.
make sure that whatever you end up with is right
Yeah.
and is
Yeah.
right for your circumstances. And starting to do things early. You
Yeah.
mentioned you speak to people who tell you that their mortgage is coming to an end this month or
Yeah.
next month. That's late. You should be starting to think about your mortgage 6 months before the end of your current deal,
Yeah. Yeah.
as early as that. There are lenders out there who can lock you in with a new rate 6 months before the end of your existing deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your current lender might not offer you anything for until 3 months before, but there are other lenders in the marketplace up to 6 months before, and that's great.
Right.
And this is what the internet won't tell you. They'll tell you how to compare rates.
Yes. Yeah.
That that's brilliant, but it's telling you that at the moment, Barclays might have a fantastic rate. HSBC or First Direct or Yorkshire Bank, they might have a fantastic rate available. But if they only have a mortgage offer that's valid for 3 months and you're 6 months away from the end of your deal,
Yeah.
well, that's not really any good for you. So
Yeah.
if you've got, let me use some actual facts. So Leeds Building Society, 3 months on a mortgage offer. Barclays, 6 months from the date you apply. Barclays might be 0.2 or 0.3% more expensive than the Leeds at this moment. I
Yeah.
don't know if they are or they're not because the rates change every day at the moment. But in an environment where interest rates are continually rising,
Yeah.
would it not make sense to lock in a rate today rather than wait for 3 months to
Yeah.
try to shave 0.2%, which is not going to be there in 3 months' time? So
Yeah.
again, this is what the internet and comparison sites are not going to be able to tell you.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and the Martin Lewises, the financial experts of this world, are not financial advisors, they're journalists. They
Yeah.
are not providing advice, they are giving information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is information that has to be by definition, because they're not licensed to give advice. It
Yeah.
has to be general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
So
walking a very fine line between advice and
yes.
information.
Yeah. I suppose at the end of the day, for people to be reassured and to receive the best possible advice for them, they need to go to a financial or mortgage expert, mortgage broker, that's got access, I suppose, to the whole of the market, independent.
Yes, independent, yeah. However, there is no such thing as whole of the market anymore. The FCA got rid of that term a number of years ago.
Right. Okay.
Because apparently it was too complicated. Go figure. Don't
Yeah.
don't get me on my soapbox. We now have independent brokers or brokers who advise from a restricted panel or non-restricted panel.
Yeah.
Most brokers like myself, we operate from a panel that's representative of what we used to term the whole of the market. So
Yeah.
I can give advice from, I think I have about 115 lenders on my panel, which is everybody you've heard of, plus most people that you've never heard of. The
Yeah.
only people I don't deal with are those lenders who don't deal with brokers.
Right. Right.
So, for example, you'll have First Direct don't deal with brokers.
Yeah.
Yorkshire Building Society don't deal with brokers, but Accord Mortgages do deal with brokers, and Accord Mortgages is part of Yorkshire Building Society.
So
And
figure that one out.
Yeah, and their address on Filey Street in Bradford and their telephone number and their postal address is exactly the same. So it's just So a broker like myself is going to be able to give you access to pretty much the majority of the lenders out there, apart from those lenders who only deal direct with consumers, including some lenders who don't deal directly with consumers.
Right, right. So the best, I suppose, the best advice for anybody is to go and see a mortgage expert.
It most certainly is.
Yeah. And also, I thought it was interesting what you said about people comparing the market, you're only really comparing rates, but there's an awful lot that sits behind that that also has to be considered, and your own personal circumstances come into the mix as well. And so it's just interesting for people to be aware of that. But also, I would say one of the things is not to be afraid of asking advice. One of the things that crops up time and time again is, oh, it's going to be expensive. It's going to really cost me. What would you sort of say to those people who are perhaps a little bit reticent of seeking professional advice because they've got this mindset that perhaps it's going to cost them an absolute fortune?
Advice doesn't have to cost you anything.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a fee charging broker, but
Yeah.
my fee agreement states that I only charge a fee which will be agreed by you prior to me undertaking any chargeable work.
Yeah.
There is no charge to come and have a conversation with us.
Yeah.
There is no cost for us to sit down, discuss your needs, see where you are, and then for me to present a recommendation to you.
Yeah.
Were you to then want me to follow through on that, then yes, there may be a fee chargeable.
Yes. Yeah.
But initially, there is absolutely no charge and there is no obligation. So nobody should be afraid of seeking out professional advice, because any broker or any advisor that you see should first of all be presenting you with what's called an initial disclosure document, which outlines the terms of their business. And as part of that terms of business disclosure, it will highlight their fee structure, which will indicate what the levels of fees are, if there are any, and when, under what circumstances those are chargeable, and of course, if they are refundable and under what terms.
Yeah. Well, Carl, thank you so much for that. We are in tumultuous times. And so I think the message here very clearly is, if you are one of those people who are considering remortgaging, or your fixed term mortgage is coming to an end at some point, seek advice. And Carl, on that basis, if somebody wanted to ask you questions, how would they get hold of you?
The easiest way really is via the contact form on our website.
Right.
So if they visit mortgageadvisorynetwork.co.uk, there's contact forms there. Otherwise, our email address is hello@m-a-n.co.uk. But via the website, contact form there. We'll be back in touch within the day to be able to arrange a convenient time to chat. We offer telephone, email, face-to-face in the office, or the most common meeting format these days is a Zoom or a Teams meeting.
Yes.
Because everybody became so accustomed to those during the lockdown that it's just convenient that you can sit there in your PJs and have a meeting with us. You don't have to leave the house on a cold, wet November evening.
Obviously with your video off, if you're in your PJs.
Absolutely. Although you would be surprised.
Carl, if there was one thing that you'd like to say to everybody, is it the one last thing that you would like to say before we complete?
The overriding comment that I think I would make to anybody now who's thinking about their mortgage, what's going to happen when their fixed rate or their current mortgage variable rate expires, is don't leave it to the end of the deal. Start thinking about it up to 6 months beforehand. And whether it's myself or whether it's any other broker, speak to an advisor, get some advice, and have somebody really understand your circumstances and let them lay out all of the options that are available to you.
Brilliant. Carl, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure what we've talked about here will be helpful and encouraging for many people as well, especially at this moment in time. So, Carl, thank you for being with us today.
No, well, thanks for the invite again, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Carl. You take care.
Bye-bye.